Jesus tells us to take his yoke upon him. Now, we've got a yoke right here, and a yoke is designed to do great work. You see, a yoke would be placed on a larger, older, more experienced animal. And that animal would teach a younger, inexperienced animal how to do the work together. They were coming together to really partner. But you know, Jesus' people perhaps did not understand that, because a yoke was also a picture of bondage. In the Old Testament, the yoke of slavery that the Egyptians had over the Israelites was a very negative picture. And so when Jesus uses this metaphor of a yoke, it had to be a little bit confusing. But what does he say? Take my yoke. He doesn't force it upon us. Do you see the difference? The Israelites had a yoke of slavery forced upon them, but Jesus' people are offered that yoke. It is not forced, but it is offered by the one who will carry the biggest burden for our lives. And so when Jesus offers his yoke to us, he tells us that he will give us rest for our souls. Well, in verse 28, he told us that he would give us a physical and an emotional rest. And here, in verse 29, Jesus tells us that he will give us a spiritual rest, an invitation to rest from the Savior of the world, an invitation to put a yoke on, to partner with Jesus, because that's really what he's saying. He understands that the life of the believer is a challenge. And so he says, take my yoke, and you will find rest for your souls. And then finally, in verse 30, he says, for my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Now, when we understand the context of that word easy, it actually means well-fitting. For my yoke is well-fitting, and a well-fitting yoke will not rub you the wrong way, will it? Perhaps Jesus even made yokes during his life. You know that his father, of course, was a carpenter, and he was a carpenter's son, and perhaps he knew how to make a yoke. So he's not just speaking a metaphor. He may be speaking from his own life experience. His yoke is well-fitting, and his burden is light. And you see, the invitation that I see here is that Jesus is inviting us to a place of peace. We can have physical rest, and we can have emotional rest, and we can have spiritual rest. But ultimately, when we yoke ourselves to Christ, we will live in a way that peace reigns in our hearts and our minds and in our lives. And isn't that the greatest invitation that all of us want to receive? We all want peace, don't we? And so I close with this question. How is your yoke fitting? Is it rubbing you the wrong way? Have you been unwilling to put it on? You know, the invitation that Jesus offered to us was not to a party. It wasn't to a place. But it was to a person, himself, a relationship that will give us that peace. That invitation wasn't written in beautiful calligraphy. It was written on the palms of his nail-scarred hands, as he says to you, to me, to the entire world, come. Will you come? That offer is for you. That invitation is for you. And that invitation you are also to take to the world. So the question is, have you received your invitation? But more importantly, have you responded to that invitation from the Savior of the world? Let's pray.